Good evening, friends. This side Rahul Magan here is a Group Chief Executive Officer, Treasury Consulting, and also a venture capitalist. Well, in the last, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, a lot of action happened globally. Now, this action is getting very much, I would say that every second day there is some or another action which is happening in the global market. Like standing today, if I say that what action is happening is basically the Aramco IPO. I would say it is the increase in the shale production compared to the oil. It is around 500k barrel per day decrease in the production of the oil decided recently by the Vienna, and approximately 400k, which is roughly 80% of that, to be done by Saudis. It is the failure of the big hedge funds not to anticipate that Vienna meeting we see a sudden hike in the cut and maybe Saudi would participate. It is the impeachment. Even today on 9th December when I will be talking, there is a recent report by Department of Justice in United States which confirms that FBI, which is basically an investigating agency in US, they were right about investigating about the Trump. So there is a hell lot of action which is happening in a global space, and I would say that right now so much action is happening that it is difficult for one human mind. According to me, it is difficult for even a computer to understand all what is happening. But one good thing which I'll assure you that is going to get happen in 2020 is that in 2020 would be a very volatile year, and this year would, I would say in English, would be make or break year for many. I would assure you, I know that many people dislike that. I would assure you that in 2020 few big names, I already anticipated few big names, but I am not going to let this video, at least in this video, in 2020 few big names will wind up, that's for sure, and many small names will eventually come in the public domain. So 2020 would be a very volatile year in a global market, but would be very great. But in this video, I'm not talking about all these which is happening. We're going to have a separate video in that regards when we will talk about the global economy outlook 2020. In this video, we talk about Australian economy, an economy which is known for rugby, which is known for their huge forestry across the globe, an economy which is known for I would say which is known for cricket, an economy which is known for political system. If we talk about Australia, which we're going to talk in 2 minutes, before that I was doing my R&D. Predominantly everyone know that I'm more or less like an Australian. We support the Julia Gillard party, and I think the biggest mistake Australians did is that they not let Julia again into the power, and I think Australia overall as an economy is paying the political price for that. But anyways, I not voted that, so I not regret that. When I was doing the research, I got a very stark revelation on financial terminal, so I immediately wrote it down. And in fact, I would say that in my 12 years of career, I have not saw this stark revelation anywhere. I'm not saying I'm a whistleblower, but once I was looking at the financial terminal, I got to know about something which, just captured my not only my mind but also my thought. We have four big banks in Australia. One is ANZ, Westpac, CBA, and NAB. Australia, New Zealand, Westpac, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and National Australian Bank. Now, if we go one by one, then Australian economy is not doing very well from a political angle, we all know. After Julia Gillard, economy is going down. The political consensus is not there. In fact, I was talking to one of the very senior gentlemen of the ANZ, and I got to know that, in Australia, in fact, bankers, the bankers fraternity of the Australia is now make up a mind that leave Australia and go to Singapore, probably Hong Kong. I know many people do not trust this, but he was even in fact telling me that in Australia, the banker community even wanted to shift to Hong Kong. I was very surprised that how can you willing to shift from Australia to Hong Kong. So people are too much pessimist in Australia that now the bushfire is there. There is another fire that started last week, political uncertainty, and more importantly, the banking system in Australia is crumbling. I call this as a death of the banking system in Australia. In Singapore, few months before we reported that Westpac closed their mortgages division. If I'm not mistaken, around 300 plus Singaporeans or 300 plus mortgages were on the road. Basically, people were clueless what to do. Who would do that? It's just like you are having a mortgage policy with the bank, and all of a sudden you woke up, or maybe on your Twitter, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, you got a message that Westpac shut it down in Singapore, and you are having a mortgage policy with the Westpac. What you do? So ultimately, the banking in Australia is crumbling. I have not seen Australia and New Zealand Bank, Westpac, National Australian Bank, and Commonwealth Bank of Australia in the public domain talking about technology. And more importantly, the shame comes when Westpac CEO stepped down only because of the money laundering issues. Now, this is a shame as far as Australia is concerned. I think two shames. What happened last year, I think this year, when Australian two cricketers, Stephen Smith and David Warner, got found guilty of ball tampering, which never happened in the Australian cricket. Australian once or lost, but they never played with the ball, right? It was the first shame on the face of the Australian cricket that you did the ball tampering. And this time, the Westpac CEO found guilty of doing the money laundering. And more importantly, it is not the money laundering, he being fined for another reason as well. Although the banking fraternity in Australia is taking care of that, but the question is, the blemish is there, and that blemish is going to be on the face of Australia for long. More importantly, if you look at the Australia top 4 banks, like I have collated the data, and that data suggests that ANZ, Australia New Zealand Bank, is having approximately 145 billion. All numbers are in AUD. AUD stands for Australian dollar. ANZ having approximately $145 billion worth of debt, while Westpac approximately 175 billion, while CBA, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, is roughly 170 billion, while NAB, National Australian Bank, is roughly 180 billion. So I again repeat the number: ANZ 145, Westpac 175, CBA, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, which is 169, NAB, National Australian Bank, which is 180. If you add 4, then the average will not be less than 150 billion, which means that the top 4 big boys of Australia are having not less than 150 billion of debt in the books. 150 billion is not million. And that debt which they accumulated is growing. It has grown. I do not have financial terminal here. I would have shown to you that this debt is growing at a much faster pace in the last several years. And the biggest question is that once the maturity will come, how Australia is going to be honoring this debt, that is also a question. Another problem which Australia is facing is the Australian dollar. Australian dollar reached 2.68, and there are stark, not revelations, but I would say the forecast we have in the interbank market, which suggest that the Australian dollar might touch 2.62. So just think yourself as an Australian exporter. Just think yourself as an Australian exporter who is exporting iron ore. Your cost is in Australian dollars, while your functional currency is Australian dollar. The mining you have in the Western Australia is in Australian dollar, while iron ore which you are giving to the party who is in the China, although maybe some other part, US and maybe India, it is in dollars. If you export $100 worth of iron ore, you used to get roughly 73 AUD to somewhere between 80 AUD that you used to get. Today you're getting 68. And more importantly, in 2020 there are huge predictions which are saying that it may get down to 62. Now consider yourself as an exporter. Where are you? Question number one. Is it beneficial for you that the same export you used to do were fetching 73 to 80 Australian dollar? Now it is fetching 68 and now it's going to fetch 62. I know many of the people, those who are watching this video, are not aware of the fact that majority of the trading happening in the iron ore, coal, platinum, diamond, in fact majority of the commodities is on the spot basis, and that's an unfortunate fact. In fact in Singapore Stock Exchange, SGX also is pretty liquid in the near term and not as liquid in the far term. That is again a reality of the life and we need to agree that. Now one important thing which is happening is that if it comes down to 0.62, then one thing, in fact two things according to me which is sure. Number one, they will cut the job. It's simple. I am exporting $100, I was getting 73, today I am getting 62. How long I can be survive that? No, I cannot survive that. So I need to wind up my business, or I need to wind up my employees. Either of that I need to do. That's it. Another problem, Australian dollar is being defined as the most manipulative currency of the year, indirectly. In fact, on the Bloomberg, on the interbank market, at several locations, Australian dollar is defined as the most manipulative currency of the year, which is shame. Never ever in the history it happened that Australian dollar is being defined as the most manipulative currency of the year. And most shame is the carry trade. Most shame is the carry trade. Australian dollar cash rate is falling, and the reason is very clear. It's a accommodative monetary policy by RBA, which is Reserve Bank of Australia. In fact, Reserve Bank of Australia Governor Philip also said that if there is a requirement, we will go for quantitative easing. Effectively, quantitative easing can always possible if the cash rate, or in Indian term which is MIBOR, in US term which is federal fund rate, in European term which is anyways negative, forget. So in Sing dollar SORA, when it will come down to almost zero, if you carefully see, I don't know how many of you understand that the carry route between Australian dollar and US dollar, Australian dollar to Japanese yen, Australian dollar to Indian rupee, more or less this carry trade is eroded. There is very small portion Australian dollar to Japanese yen which is happening now, and probably how long I don't know. If Reserve Bank of Australia will cut the cash rate which they are signaling, which is quantitative easing, which will definitely dilute the impact of Australia. Another bad thing which is happening for Australia is the mining investment. We know that Sydney is the financial center, Melbourne is a financial center. We have Perth, which is Western Australia, is basically the mining hub. Gone are the beautiful days in 2010 to 2014 when humongous amount of investment happened in the mining sector in Western Australia, and that pushed the Australian dollar to 1.08. Now this 1.08, it's once again going back to 0.62. The moral of the story is that if the mining sector collapse, which is more or less happened in Australia, then it's an end of show. Real estate is approximately decade low. My dear friends, I don't know how many of you know it not, but the bungalow which was next to one of the very famous Australian cricketer, I will not name that in public domain, one of the very famous Australian cricketer, a bungalow in Melbourne, you can guess to whom I am naming. This bungalow or villa, they call it villa in Australia, it was costing 10 million Australian dollar. And you would be surprised to know that how much it is costing now. It's not even 50% of what it was few years ago. So, you know, a famous villa, and the next villa is nothing but the villa of the former Australian captain. You can just guess it. And this is less than 50%. This is where we actually live in Australia. The real estate sector is almost at the crash. And last but not the least, what's happening in the Australia is the banking crisis. In fact, in the last week, Westpac, ANZ, and now a hedge fund who is being titled as the manipulative, basically they manipulative and they find Overall, Australian economy is in a mess. There is no doubt about that. From a currency angle, it is in a mess. From a central bank angle, the accommodative monetary policy, it is in a mess. From a real estate angle, there is no words I have. From a government and a political stability, on paper we have political stability, but eventually the new government has not taken any strategic decision since inception, including the tax cuts. From a banking front, whatever is happening, you know. From a technology angle, Australia is far away from Singapore. You know, Singapore and Dubai are leading basically as the gatekeepers of Southeast Asia as far as the technology is concerned. I need to appreciate that. Even though I have 10 interpretation issues with Singapore and 10 with Dubai, but in technology they are the gatekeepers of Southeast Asia. And unfortunately, in the technology front, especially blockchain, Bitcoin, Internet of Things, cryptocurrency and structured derivative and multiple, Reserve Bank of Australia stance was not good. You would be surprised to know that Singapore doing Project Obin. Late or early, that's a different thing. China is launching digital yuan. Number of banks in US are working on their digital currencies, including Goldman, JP Morgan. While Facebook Libra, I don't know what would happen. Apparently speaking, Dubai also is on the blockchain from 1st January 2021. So practically approximately 1 year to go. But did you ever heard that Australia as an economy is coming forward and taking a very leap and giant step in the technology piece? Did you ever heard in the public domain that ANZ, Westpac, CBA, NAB, their research report talking about the technology? On a public space, Goldman, JP, Citi and Singaporean banks are coming and pushing actually for a technological changes. But the Australian banks pretty much silent. So conclusion is pretty clear that Australia is moving towards a very weak economy in 2020. I see that we see huge volatility in Australian economy. Political uncertainty is possible because people will wait for a period, right? After that, they need to go. They need to change the government. It is not like India or maybe another country. If currency will depreciate from here, it's mess off and lot of things. In 2020 will not be a conducive year for Australia for one more reason, which is nothing but the iron ore. China has clearly said that the steel production, in fact Bloomberg also said that in Singapore during one of the conferences, that steel production in China will fall down, and supposed to be because there is not much demand. And if steel production will fall down, ultimately the main component used in the steel production, iron ore, it will also fall down. The cooking coal, the metallurgical coal, all kind of inputs will fall down. We know that Australia is a leading exporter for that. The biggest mistake Australia did is the commoditization. They link their GDP with the commoditization and now they need to pay the price of that. In fact, Singapore also linked their GDP with the financial services, but there is a catch. Singapore continuously evolving, adding new things, challenging themselves, introspection, always on the toes and so many things. But Australia, all these things are missing. Eventually, 2020 will definitely not be good for Australia and we see a lot of mess up on the cards. I'm sorry, you may mind it, but my apologies. It might possible that we will see a very handsome cut in the workforce of Australia. Because in a year or so, if the real estate will continue to fall in Australia, the corporate sector will continue to fall in Australia, the earnings continue to be muted and so on and so forth, it would be mess up. And let's see, 2020 is on the cards few days from now. With this, we thank you very much. You know my mobile number, which is +91 9899242978. You know our fixed income platform, www.fixedincome.global. And please do not forget that now we have a TikTok channel also, where the user ID is Rahul Magan 8. 8 means numeric 8. Rahul Magan, my spelling RAHULMAGAN 8. Where we have approximately 600 videos and growing. We keep shooting 10 to 15 different TikTok videos every day and hopefully we continue to shoot. With this, we thank you very much and see you tomorrow in the next video.